Hello friends, Jeff here and welcome to Facebook. Welcome to Squadron actually, and welcome to Facebook Live. As you can tell, we have Frank Landers with us as a guest. Welcome Frank, I'm glad you join us.
Thank you.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about modeling mishaps, or what can go wrong building a model, or what could go wrong building a model, or what went wrong. And hopefully, maybe we can prevent you from doing a couple things wrong. We reached out to you guys last week and asking if any of you have some questions about mishaps that they had, or maybe some request of explaining something. And we got a couple things that came in, a couple questions. A couple guys reached out, and hopefully we'll be able to explain a little bit and maybe fix some stuff left and right. Now there's also a couple things that can go wrong that is beyond fixing. So let's see how it goes. So first of all, yeah, that's me. I can go. So the first question that I got is most of the time, you know, it's about canopies. Canopies has been the most part that can go wrong. You know, when people spill glue or they mispaint it or anything, and then the first thing they ask, what can we do to explain this? Not explain this, to fix this. So there's two kinds of things that can happen with a canopy. First of all, if you spill glue, if you spill plastic cement or plastic weld, 99.9% it's ruined. There's nothing you can do because the plastic cement or the plastic weld will eat into the plastic, and it will either fog up or, like I said, burn or melt a hole in it, or at least make a permanent damage. So there's not much you can do. Now, if on the other hand, if you spill some super glue on it, that's a different story, because as we talked about it a couple of weeks before about applying the glue and the difference between super glue and plastic weld and all that, super glue is actually plastic weld melts the plastic. It's a chemical reaction and it melts the plastic, it fuses the plastic together, while super glue is like a thin film that forms around it, and that will make the parts stick together. Yes. So if you by any chance spill super glue, the super glue of course gets hard, and then you can try to scrape it off or sand it off. Now you have to be extremely careful how you do that, but it's not beyond repair. So let's say that you have a piece where you messed up. No. Let's say that you have a piece that is messed up and you had to scrape it off a little bit, some super glue on the side or whatever. Even paint, even if you paint it and you messed up a little bit and you just want to wash it up, but it starts to at least starts to fog up a little bit, or it left some sort of a blemish that you can't get off. Once you sand it off, once you basically get most of the stuff off, it's good to have like an extra fine sanding stick. Now, when you rub over this, you hardly can feel any grain. So it's basically, there's nothing on there. Still, it's an abrasive. So you can start going over there and try to get rid of the blemish. You basically have to polish it. You know, polish it. You don't have to worry about it because this doesn't really do very much, but it will polish all the scratches out that you're left with a bigger grain sanding stick. So once you did this, if you do it right, you can do two things, or a couple things actually. First of all, you can use car polish. You ever used car polish to do that? You can use car polish, and just take a little piece of a t-shirt or a handkerchief or whatever you had, and start rubbing it like you polish a car, but you really have to put some force on it. And when you do that for a while, you will see that it basically restores itself.
It gets nice, bright, and shiny. You can also use toothpaste.
Yeah, toothpaste. I was just thinking, I thought, I never used toothpaste, but I always thought, somebody told me that a long time ago, and I thought it might be some sort of a myth
No.
But
you can use toothpaste, because toothpaste will be a lower grade than this.
Mm-hmm.
You just put a little bit in with water, and you just brush it along, and it'll pull it out.
Okay, well, see. So again, it's not beyond repair. Now, another thing you can do, and if you're not satisfied and you still see it's a little cloudy or anything, there is a liquid shine that you can use, or just a plain old floor wax, I guess, like a pledge. But liquid shine, what it does is, and I'll show that to you. So, you got a little reservoir here. You can always put it back in the bottle when you're done. So what you do is, maybe you can get the camera a little bit closer here. Let's. All you do is just dip it in there. Dip it in there, and let it drip as much as you can.
Now, sometimes it'll help if you have a Q-tip and you put the Q-tip right on the edge here. It'll wick it off.
But look at that. Look at that. It's shiny. Oops.
Okay. So Jeff illustrated something that can happen here. If you drop it while it's still wet or before it's dried, you say, well, what do I do now that it's hardened up? Well, the nice thing about that is you can take Windex, and Windex will cut right through this. Mm-hmm. And you'll come up with take all the future or the shine off, and you start all over again. Okay. And it's a pretty easy process.
So the trick is to, again, be prepared. Maybe one of those third hands come in handy. Can you get that over there? So this is actually, and this is not a sales pitch, but it's actually works. So if, let's say if you do this, I should have done this from before. So you dip it in the liquid shine, and you just put it somewhere.
So this is where you can see that it's puddling up on here. Yeah. Okay, so that's where you want to be able to wick that off, and you can use
maybe like
really,
a tissue,
can use a tissue, but I use these really tight woven Q-tips.
Okay.
You don't want to use a fluffy one you stick in your ear. You want to use a really tight woven one, and if you just put it on there, it's going to wick it right off. Mm-hmm.
This, like I said, this is the perfect thing. Like Frank said, the only thing you need to be careful about when you put it away, make sure that you don't have any puddles or any accumulation around the edges. But that's a way to fix a canopy. Again, if you spill glue, like a plastic wilt or plastic cement, that's you're in trouble. There's nothing you can do about that. But if it's anything like super glue or maybe some paint, you can easily get that off by either wiping it off with maybe some enamel thinner, no lacquer, just enamel thinner. And if it's super glue, you have to basically sand it off and then just start buffing until it's no more, and then just to really finish it off, stick it into the liquid shine or some pledge that you have laying around the house, and you should be fine.
Now, one thing I'll do, Jeff, is I'll take that and I'll stick it in here because you can see it's still dripping. Mm-hmm. Flip it down, and because some people have cats, I don't have cats, but some people have cats, you can put it in there and let it dry.
Oh, okay. Well.
Okay, and that way you don't get any dust particles on it, and it'll stay nice and clear. You don't have to buff it out, because a lot of times if you just hang it out here, you might get some dust particles that glom onto it.
It will never fail.
And again, you'll have to start over with Windex, take it off, and redo it again.
That's also that's another thing, and that's a good point that you bring. I mean, it's the same thing with even airbrushing lacquers or something. You know, there is always this issue of there is always one dust particle that will find its way to your model.
Right.
And then it's an eyesore. It's very annoying. So when you do this, make sure that you can cover it up and that there is no complications, because a canopy, believe it or not, it's one of the most sensitive parts in a model kit, and it would be. I always thought, like, why can't they at least give you a spare? You know, it doesn't cost much more.
No.
Another thing here. Now, sometimes, again, about the canopy. Sometimes you have an old kit, like let's say from the 60s, 70s, and let's use this again. It's like fogged up like this. You know, there's not much you can do with a sanding stick because it's clouded. You know, you can see it's clouded. So if you have one of those kits and you really want to build it, and you see that this canopy is all fogged up, then just stick it in the liquid shine again, or in the
acrylic,
and look, there you go. Problem solved. So there's it's a simple thing, but it can eliminate a lot of headaches. So don't panic if you spilled a little glue, at least super glue, or a little paint on your canopy and you want to wipe it off and you run into some problems. This is a way to really fix it.
One of the nice things about this product is that it actually will fill in some of the pits, because
Sure.
when you have a surface on the model kit, it'll look really smooth, but it's actually not smooth. It's got little tiny pits in there, and what the liquid shine will do is actually go in and fill in some of those pits. It's not going to take away your detail of your panel lines and rivets and everything else like that much, but it will level it off a little bit, and it gives you a smoother surface.
True. Didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's right. It will at least take some of the blemishes out there.
Now, the other way you can do this is you can.
Oh yeah, I got like a.
I'm gonna borrow the shine here, and you can see on this, you can dip it and hold it in like this. You can also go in with a nice big soft paintbrush, and I'm gonna do this on the model here, and all I'm gonna do is just paint it like this.
Well,
now, what you got to be really careful.
the problem with this one is I think you use the wrong thing because it's on the inside too.
Yeah, but it looks better than it did. So you got to be real careful because this will dry fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that when you put it on here, it's wet. If it's starting to dry, you want to back off and leave it alone for a while. Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing actually how quick it dries.
Right. The other thing you can do on this, and I do this all the time for decals, you can have a part like this, and this has got a matte finish on it. And what you can do is you can go in here, and anywhere you're going to put a decal, I'll just go in and wipe it across like this. And again, it'll self-level. And what you have, instead of having a matte surface now, you have a glossy surface.
Yeah,
okay?
and it's absolutely glossy.
Which is what decals need, because the biggest problem for decals is you get air trapped underneath the decal, and that's what causes the shine. So by putting this on here first, you can put that on there. Now you can wait till this dries. I've actually put decals on when it's wet.
Oh, really?
And I don't have any problem. And then when it dries, I'll sit there and take shine and just go back over it again like this.
Oh, I never tried that.
Okay. Now you can see what happened here. I can see what happened here, but because I put the first layer on, you got to let it dry a little bit before you put a second layer on.
Yeah,
Because you're messing up the first layer. This was probably wet enough that it's still going to settle down, but you can do this on any surface for decaling purposes, and you won't have the problem where it silvers.
That is true. The liquid shine is actually dries very, very quick, so you have to stay in motion. And if you back off for a couple seconds, make sure that that it's either completely dry, or that you don't put on another coat, because it might dissolve the coat underneath, and then you run into more problems, and that's really a headache once you get there.
You can already see right there the difference between this one and this one.
Yeah. No, it really gets the thing really crystal clear. So again, for the canopies, I think not all is lost when you screw up. It's just that you only have to be careful with plastic wilt and plastic cement, because that's something you can't fix.
So when you're done with your brush, what do? You rinse it in Windex or your favorite ammonia product, but Windex works really good.
Okay, we have a question?
We do have a question from Willie Peters.
Oh boy.
Will the Windex
Willie?
eat the plastic canopy if you want to start over?
Will what? Eat the plastic canopy?
Will the Windex eat the plastic canopy?
No.
It's based on water. On
In fact, you can be pretty rough with it. This is basically ammonia. I'll usually use a toothbrush if I'm in a hurry. I'll spray this on here really thick, and then I'll use a toothbrush and go, and it'll come off real quick. You rinse it off, let it dry, and then you can put the shine on right afterwards.
Great. He's had some masking liquid react to the clear coating and cloud up. Is that something that you guys are familiar with?
So yes, if you use masking on a canopy and you put the shine on top of that, you'll get a clouding effect, because usually what's happened is the masking underneath hasn't dried, and it's still venting. So you put the shine on top of that, and it covers it up, and when that eventually dries, then you got a little spot there. So again, that's where you come back. You can use the Windex to take it off. Now, I had that happen on a recent model, and the stuff from the masking was still there, and it looked like a little drop of water but was blurry and would come out. So that's where you get a stick here, and you got to polish that little part off, or that little blur off. And that's where these come in to be very nice to use.
Also, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a moment. We do have some shout outs here saying hello this afternoon. We have David Mason watching, Mike Rusiga, Jerry Hendrickson, he's a regular, Mark Sprayberry, Adam Coleman, Vernon Pereira, Ty Gookin, and Mark Hydro, and David and Shirley Elman so far. So a couple regulars there.
Hey guys, glad you joined us, and hopefully we can teach you something, or maybe not. Anyway, but glad you're tuned in. So another question I get is, somebody asked me, like, how can you repair if you have to sand? Let's say you have to sand the fuselage together, or anything, like where you have to like glue one part on another. And in the process, you have to sand away the detail. Like, and I think in this case, I'm not sure that the gentleman meant something other than panel lines. So, in most cases, when let's say you have to, and I'm using this as an example. Let's say that you have two fuselage halves, and you have to sand those together, right, to get a flush kind of like a transition. Then 99%. You either have to sand the detail away, because the panel lines, they usually go across. So you're ending up with a little spot here where there is no detail, no panel lines either raised or recessed. So what you can do in both instances, again, not all is lost. One of my, and then afterwards I'll let Frank give his expertise. But what I usually do, and this is, it almost works all the time, and it's the easiest way so far, is that let's say that you have raised panel lines. In this case, you just use a very sharp, preferably a new scalpel or an X-Acto knife, and you just follow wherever you can see that there is a panel line, it's interrupted. You try to go from one side all the way to the other, and you just go like this. You make this motion and try to stay. Now, because the knife is new, the plastic, if you push it hard enough, the plastic will raise on both sides. So basically you create a ridge, and then with a little Scotch-Brite pad here, you just go over it a little softly. Don't really push very hard, just to basically blend those two ridges together. And then when you go over it, you get a brand new panel line. And once you paint it, you won't even notice it. The other thing is, if you have recessed panel, engraved panel lines, it's the same thing. You try to follow the line where the panel line needs to be. You push your knife in there, and then try to sand it. You sand it a little bit, do it again, and sand it, and eventually you will create like a little, how do you say that? A gutter or a ditch or a channel, a little.
An engraved panel line.
Yeah, an engraved panel line. And then once you paint it, it will just, if you put like a pinstripe wash over it, it will just fill in like the rest of your airplane. So that's, in my case, the simplest way. Now there are more sophisticated ways, and maybe Frank, you can tell about your spread through technique.
So once you have me that part right there.
Sure.
Okay, so the other thing you can do is if you're dealing with raised panel lines, and especially if you're dealing with old monogram kits, and you sand this away and you want to replace that, so a good way to do that and get that raised panel line back is by stretching sprue. So Jeff is going to demonstrate how Jeff stretches sprue here, and while he's doing, go ahead, and while he's doing that, here's some that we've already stretched, okay? And so you can watch where he's getting it heated up fairly well here.
When it falls limp in a way, this is where you start stretching it, and you can make it as long and as wide as you can. The longer you stretch it, or the more you basically heat it up, the thinner you can make it. and you can make antennas with it. You can do all kind of stuff with it, and it's pretty cool. And you can even use use it for cables, not cables, antennas for an airplane, or you can use it for antennas for armor. Again, the longer you let it burn, the softer it gets, the thinner it goes. If you, let's say, like for this case, in this case, let's say, see if I don't burn my fingers. Let's say I want like a little bit of a thicker kind of a deal. You just have to work with it a little, see, and then you can make a thicker one. So see, and this is basically good for antennas. So now I have a little story about that. Just now that we're stretching sprue, many years ago when I was a kid, and the reason I found it out the hard way that you could do that. So many years ago when I was a kid, I built a Tamiya. I think it was a Panther. And all the instructions back then were in Japanese. I couldn't read that. And many of you might have read my article about this, but it's a true story. When me and my dad were building this model, eventually the whole kit was built and painted, and we were missing one thing, which was the antenna. And so we looked in the box and there was no antenna in there. There was only a drawing of it, like a German cartoon, and he had like a text balloon over his head, and it says something in Japanese, how to make an antenna. Now what we didn't know, because we didn't speak any Japanese and couldn't read any Japanese, what we didn't know is that they talked about plastic sprue, but I couldn't really figure it out what it was. So it showed a cartoon figure trying to heat something up and try to stretch it. So me and my dad, the only thing that was left in that box back then in the days in the Tamiya kits, there was like a little motor that came with, an electric motor and some shafts. So there was one metal bar in there that was left that we didn't know where it belonged to. So in my mind, in my infantile mind, I thought, well, this got to be the part that we have to basically put like a lighter underneath there, and then, or a candle, and then we can start stretching it. So you know what happens, because metal guides heat. So I was getting my dad's lighter, and I was really getting that thing in my hand, because that's what the cartoon told me to do in Japanese. So finally, you don't have to guess very much. I burned my fingers, you know. And then my dad looked at it and said, "No, wait a minute. This is something that you are doing wrong or something." So he tried it. So he burned his fingers. And then I remember vividly the smell of burnt flesh in the house, because we both of them were trying to get that thing together. So actually, we were not successful. So later on, maybe a couple of years later, I realized that, yeah, you have to do it from plastic sprue. So it's a true story. Not all that funny at the time, but it's funny now.
Well, the other thing you can do with the sprue, and you can, by stretching, you can get different widths here. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but you can stretch a sprue out to the exact width that you want. And you can see the big difference between this one here and this one here.
Yeah, it's all about practice, you know. Actually, it doesn't cost anything, because sprue is
sprue.
I mean, it's sprue. It's attached to the frame.
So the example here is, this is a monogram 1/48 scale Tweety bird, and it's got raised panel lines. So if you scrape away all the panel lines here, all you need to do is take one of these stretched sprues, you lay it on where you don't have that raised panel line anymore, you set it on there and you glue it. Okay? Be very judicious with your glue, because if you're putting on hot glue, it's going to melt the plastic. But it'll be raised enough that you can still see the panel line going all the way around, and it'll still carry any panel line paint that you want to put on there. And it's real simple to do.
It's actually a thing I never thought about, but that I'm sure that will work. I mean,
anytime you're doing any kits with raised panel lines, this is an excellent way to replace old panel lines that you sanded off.
We do have another question. Harry Hamilton asks, how do you restore cast steel texture, like on a cast tank turret?
Oh, actually, that's a good question. You do that with putty. And I wish that I got that question earlier, maybe, so I could prepare for it. But what you do, when you have a cast turret, you use glazing putty. The putty, like Squadron putty or Tamiya putty or any glazing putty that you can find. And you mix it. You put it a little bit on a piece of plastic sheet, or on something like a hard surface, You squirt some of the putty on there, and then you use either plastic weld or plastic cement as a thinner. So you start mixing that up, and if you use plastic weld or plastic cement, it will dissolve the putty, and then you can brush it on. So you take a brush, and let me see if I have, let's say that this is part of your turret here. So you mix it up, and it becomes like it looks like a surface primer kind of a deal. So you mix it up, and you start dabbing it on with a rough brush. This is already too fine, but like a used brush, and you just something like that, and you just dab it on there. Now putty will dry immediately, you know, and it's also the lacquer. The lacquer will eat a little bit in the plastic, so you get a very good adhesive on that. So you start doing that, and when you hold it to the light, you can see already variances in the relief. So once you do that, you let it dry for maybe a couple of minutes, and then you use like a fine sanding stick and just gently get all the sharp ridges off. When you hold it to the light again, then you will see that you get a nice metal cast structure. Now, I can't show it right now because I wasn't prepared for that. But try it. Just use glazing putty, either our putty or Tamiya putty or any putty that, even automotive putty like Bondo. Thin it with a lacquer, preferably like a very aggressive lacquer, like a plastic weld or plastic cement, and then just try to solve the putty. Dab it on with an old brush, and you can regulate that. You can see where you want it smoother than in certain places. And then just let it dry for maybe a minute, and then go over it with a fine sanding stick, and just try to buff all the edges, and then you will see that you get it's a very, very realistic pattern.
So here's another way you can do it. I use the Halo paint, okay? And what you do is you put it on, you let it dry for a little bit. I'm not gonna let it dry, but you take a wide brush, old brush like this, you just dip it in here, and you paint this way. And you keep painting, you let that dry, you come in with some more paint like this, and you eventually get ridges, okay? And let it dry, okay? You can come back and go cross like this, and you'll get ridges. And on biplanes, you can get a fabric effect by doing that.
That's a good
On
one.
tanks, you just put the paint on thicker, let it dry, and come. The key is going back and forth, 90 degrees, and you'll get the same effect.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
But like I said, the canvas effect or the
canvas effect. So for 72nd, 48th, you can do this, and you'll get a canvas effect real quick on a smooth surface. But you do the same thing. I'm working on a tank right now, and you get the same type of effect where you get the rough texture for the casting. We'll do the same thing.
Yeah, but like I said, I had very good effect with putty, and there are some videos out there that I've seen that really demonstrated how you can do that. I think even our videos during my Lee build, if you look on Squadron TV, go to the Lee build video, and in part of that, I'm demonstrating that. So it's out there, and again, it's a very simple procedure to do, and it's very effective and very, very realistic.
We have another question. I don't mean to
No,
interrupt.
that's okay.
TM Lore says, what is the best way of removing clear parts and cleaning up where the sprue attached to the clear part?
Okay, so if you're going to use your nippers, the reason you get problems on these parts is if you come in with your nippers, you get the part right up here. Clear styrene is different than it's harder. And so if you come right down next to it, you're going to take the chance that you're going to get taking the part here is going to break into the canopy that you want to keep. Okay, so what you always want to do when you're taking off sprue is cut away from the sprue like this. You can see where it's not close to the sprue. And then what I do is I make successive bunts until I get close. You don't want to go all the way down. When you get down close enough, you go to sanding sticks.
Yeah,
and you can start, or a knife. You got to be careful with knife, because if you get too aggressive pulling that with a knife, you'll still pull a part of it out. But when you get down this point, try to get it sanded down. You want to use a higher grade, rougher core than that. But as you get closer, you use a extra fine like this, and then you'll get in it. And that'll avoid causing this part to break off and take part of it with it.
Another good thing is, because you almost have to do that every time, you know, the last thing is sanding it with an extra fine stick. But another thing I really like is a razor saw.
Yes.
Because a razor saw, because what Frank just explained is that you put some sort of a torque in between, and you once you close your nippers, the plastic will basically starts to twist, and that's when you snap that part off that you don't want. But with a razor saw, you don't have that. So if you have a razor saw available, that is one of the best ways to remove it, because it's very thin. You can actually slice it almost close to the part itself, and then eventually you finish it off with a sanding stick.
And you can see that's what's happened here on the tail part where we got too close to it. We actually took part of the plastic you want to keep off.
It's the same with plastic, with any plastic. If you want to take apart, especially smaller parts, you always have the if you're not careful, especially with little handles or little kind of things, you always have to be careful in nipping those off, because 9 out of 10 you'll damage the part. And the extra problem with canopies is, like Frank said, it's very, very hard plastic. That's the only thing that they can do to make it really crystal clear. And that's why it's also more fragile and more, what's the word? Can't come up with the word.
Breakable.
Yeah, but it's breakable. It's not fragile. It's anyway, that's for next. I can't come up with a word.
Carlton Boykin asks, what is your favorite tool for creating paint?
Paint?
Paint, P-A-N-E.
For creating paint.
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 Like a pane of glass, or...
Oh, a pane of glass. Super glue.
Well, I'm just
It depends on what the size of it is. So if you have, and we don't have a model kit here, but if you're doing airliners, for example, you can run tape along here, and you put the shiny surface down on the kit.
They corrected panel lines.
Favorite way for creating panel lines?
Yes.
Okay, so you got this.
Pardon.
Or Squadron sells this really nice scriber here, and basically what it does is it goes in and creates a mark in the plastic, and it basically just peels off a line of plastic. Now, you got to be real careful with this, because if you go...
You can take it out.
Okay.
Now, when he's unpackaging,
I'm buying this part right now.
My favorite tool as far as getting raised panel lines is a brand new scalper or an X-Acto knife in a ruler, because again, once you get over the next to the ruler and you scrape it over the plastic, it will raise up. The ridges will raise up. Again, you go over it with a little piece of Scotch-Brite pad, and you got a brand new crisp panel line.
So you can see right on this part here where I've scribed the line, is it basically pulls up a little plastic curlicue on here. Right here. So I've got a panel line on the inside of this thing here. You can see this is the plastic that I pulled up. Okay, and again, once you've done that, you want to go in and use this Scotch-Brite and clean it up so that you have both sides nice and nice. But that's what it's going to do. Now, if you're trying to do a straight line, what I've done many times, I use dynamo tape to mark the line that I want to do. That way I can use the dynamo tape as a guide to make sure I'm drawing a straight line or not going off where I want to go. And you can do the same thing if you're going over the back curve there. You can get tape and just pull it around there, get the exact line you want, and then use that tape as a guide to do the scribing with either this or with a scalpel blade.
Now, and we have to cut it short already, because man, we were already talking about 30 minutes.
Well, you're talking too much.
Yeah, I know that. Like Frank said, when you scrape something out and you form that panel line, that channel, sometimes there's a little bit of residue in there, like dust, and you can't get that out. What I usually do is I take a fine brush and I dip it in plastic weld, and I just go over it, and the plastic weld will immediately melt the particles, and you have a clean, crisp panel line.
Correct. It's the same thing here. If you put the plastic or the liquid cement on this thing will just melt into nothing immediately.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing there.
So you have to really be careful, but that's another way to get all the dust and all the particles out. So.
We do have one more question.
Okay.
Larry Stone asks, what is the preferred paint, enamel or acrylic, and why does enamel clear coat tend to affect acrylic? Is it because of the acrylic mixture?
Okay, so there's three types of paints. You have enamel paints, you have lacquer paints, and you have acrylic paints. Well, actually, you have enamels and lacquers. Because you can get enamel lacquer in acrylics and in oil paint. The enamel paint is brighter, it has a nicer surface finish, but what the problem with enamel is that underneath that shiny finish, you still have paint degassing. So the carrier for the paint particles is still gassing out. It'll gas out for weeks, okay? So that's why you can't put other types of paints on top of enamels and get away with it very often until that enamel is fully dried. With a lacquer style paint, you paint it on and it degasses almost immediately. But you don't get a shiny surface, you get a flatter surface, okay? So you can, the lacquer will dry quicker, but you're not gonna get the shine. Of course, then you can use liquid shine, whereas the enamels are gonna give you a brighter finish, but they take longer to degas out. So you gotta be real careful about putting any type of paint on enamel. Now again, they make enamel and lacquer in acrylics and oils. So you gotta look at what you're talking about. I don't know if it says on here that,
Well, honestly,
but there is a difference.
Honestly, in today's paints, I must admit that I really never experienced any failures as far as when putting one paint on top of another one. Now, with the older paints, yeah, but these days everything is almost compatible with anything. My thing is, and everybody always laughs with that, I said, I have to respect the dry times, and as long as you respect the dry times, you can basically put anything on top of everything. So, but I think we have to cut it short now, because, anyway, first of all, we're gonna go with the raffle from last week. So last week we were raffling off this Panzer 4, Ausführung J from Dragon, and we'll Frank do the honors and with your innocent hand. All right, so who we got?
And the winner is Paula Perea?
Yeah,
Perea?
Paula Perea, yeah.
Paula Perea.
So, hey Polo, you're a regular, I guess. You know the drill. Please contact us through our email or call our customer service with the address, and we'll get that thing out as soon as possible. Next week, we're going to raffle off an Academy kit, Tomcat, the F-14A Bombcat. So again, you know the drill. Put your name, leave a comment. And you don't have to do it during the live, but you can also do it on the YouTube channel. And if you revisit the Facebook, you can do it then. But everybody who leaves a comment in the comment section, his name will go into the bag, and next week you can win this F-14. Then, okay, all right. We still have an unclaimed prize, Chris McLean. Chris, if you're watching this, you still have to contact us so we can mail this out to you. There's a couple other people that have unclaimed prizes, but if between now and a couple of weeks you don't claim this prize, we're going to raffle it off to somebody else. But again, Chris McLean, if you're watching this, please contact our customer service or email us, and we'll get that thing out to you as soon as possible. And other than that, I think we're done with this. Again, share everything. Please subscribe on Facebook. Please subscribe on YouTube. Go to our website and check out for the new stuff that's coming in. It's going to go a little slower now with all the stuff that is happening right now, but please keep checking our website at squadron.com. And then again, we'll see each other, I guess, next week at 12 o'clock Central. Jeff here and Frank signing off today.